Hello, welcome everybody to this online lecture based on Physics 11th Standard CBSE. Now, in a couple of classes which we have had as live synchronous classes in the past, we have discussed already some part related to scalars and vectors, and we have compared these quantities, we have taken examples of each of these, and we have also seen that there is some special arithmetic called as vector algebra related to the mathematical operations of vectors, of which we have also derived one formula so far, which helps us to find the resultant of two vectors. So on one hand, we are discussing and studying and learning about vectors. At the same time, we will now in these pre-recorded sessions start a discussion about something slightly different. So vectors, what we have done, correlating it with the 11th standard CBSE textbook, NCERT textbook, we are doing chapter 4 in the part 1 of the textbook. उसमें आपको vectors का जो हमने derivation किया है वो आपको वहाँ पढ़ने को मिलेगा. That is what we have discussed in our online sessions which were conducted live so far. Today's session, as I said, is essentially based on the slightly different topic which is a little earlier in the textbook. So chapter number 2 जो है textbook में, first chapter एक general introduction की तरह है जिसको हम ऐसे ही कभी जनरल इंट्रोडक्शन के तौर पे फिजिक्स क्या होता है, फिजिक्स में क्या इनोवेशंस हुए हैं, फिजिक्स में कैसे साइंटिस्ट रहे हैं, ये इस टाइप का एक इंट्रोडक्टरी चैप्टर है जो एक्चुअली एग्जाम इवैल्यूएशन के पॉइंट से इट इज नॉट ऑफ मच सिग्निफिकेंस, but it is a bit interesting to generally know about physics. So someday we will have a casual discussion about that. The more serious part of physics and of our syllabus actually starts from the second chapter. That is what we are also going to start with today. This is a very easy to understand chapter. इसमें जो भी पढ़ने जैसा है, I am very sure कि ज़्यादातर इसका इस तरीके से हम प्री रिकॉर्डेड लेक्चर से भी करेंगे तो आपको डेफिनेटली समझ में आएगा. कुछ चीज़ें बिल्कुल हम साथ में लाइव इंटरैक्टिव कर भी लेंगे. So having said this as an introduction, we will now actually start with this chapter and our discussion related to the second chapter in physics. Now, in this chapter, we deal with, as we say, units, measurements, dimensions and so on. सबसे पहले एक पूछते हैं, what exactly is physics? So physics, when we talk of, generally in very simple words, when we have to explain what is physics about, physics as a subject क्या करता है? So physics essentially deals with the natural phenomena around us. So such as, for example, physics tries to explain why this marker in my hand, if I leave it, why will it always fall down and not start moving up? And if I try to press it, it will not get pressed easily. Whereas if I try to push a finger in it, it won't go easily. On the other hand, if there is a cup of water and I put my finger in it, my finger will easily go into it. ये सारी जो हम observations देखते हैं, इसके पीछे का underlying logic क्या है? ऐसा क्यों होता है? Physics essentially tries to explain all of these, and in the process of doing this, in physics, we come across a variety of different physical quantities such as mass, density, velocity, energy, work, electrical current and so on. So आज हम इस चैप्टर से ये जो सारी अलग अलग physical quantities हैं, we are going to study a little bit about this. So physics deals a lot with physical quantities. Examples we took: mass, time, density, velocity, etc. अब ऐसे एक्चुअली अगर लिस्ट लगाने जाएंगे तो the number of physical quantities that you typically come across in physics is quite huge. It's far more than what you have been exposed to so far. So there are many quantities in physics which we have not even been exposed to in our course of studies till 10th standard. सो एक काफ़ी लंबी लिस्ट है, बट ये सारी लंबी लिस्ट जो है इसको अगर हम सिंप्लीफाई करना चाहेंगे, इफ वी ट्राई टू सी इफ देयर इज समथिंग दैट इज possible to make it easy to study these, then what we realize is that you can broadly divide these physical quantities into two main types. One which we call as fundamental or in simple words basic physical quantities, and इसका opposite है derived. अब इनमें क्या फर्क है? ये सारी जो क्वांटिटीज हम फिजिक्स में करते हैं इसमें कुछ ऐसी है कि जो बहुत बेसिक है, फाउंडेशन बनाती है। इनके अलग अलग कॉम्बिनेशन से बहुत सारी और क्वांटिटीज बन सकती है। सो दिस इज समथिंग लाइक, वी टेक एन एग्जांपल टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस। इफ यू टॉक ऑफ द इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज, देन देयर आर लिटरली more than a few million words in the language. But how many alphabets do we have? We have only 26 basic alphabets. So A से लेकर Z तक 26 alphabets है। इनके अलग अलग combinations से बहुत सारे numerous, more than a million words are possible. Same way, what we find is in physics also there are actually only a few limited quantities. These are what we call as the basic or the fundamental quantities. इनमें आते हैं quantities like mass, time, length, and so on. We are going to list all of them shortly, but these are some examples. अब इनके अलग अलग कॉम्बिनेशन से डिराइव्ड क्वांटिटीज बन सकती है। जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल, इफ यू टेक एन ऑब्जेक्ट, इट हैज अ सर्टेन मास, फंडामेंटल क्वांटिटी, you can measure its length, breadth, height, which is all effectively length in different directions, and you can then calculate volume. अब वॉल्यूम जो है, which is length into breadth into height, all of which are measured as length along this direction, length here, etc. ये इनसे derived हो गया। So volume becomes a derived quantity. अब mass upon volume अगर हमने कर दिया तो we get density, which is again one more derived quantity. So इनके अलग अलग कॉम्बिनेशन से हमको बहुत सारे और क्वांटिटीज आ सकते हैं। जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल अगेन, एक पार्टिकल आज ए पोजीशन पे है, यहाँ से वो शिफ्ट होके बी पोजीशन पे चला गया, तो इट हैज अंडरगॉन व्हाट वी कॉल एज अ डिस्प्लेसमेंट। डिस्प्लेसमेंट इज अ सर्टेन लेंथ, सो यू कैन मेजर इट एज अ लेंथ। इन हाउ मच टाइम डिड इट टेक प्लेस, यू कैन मेजर द टाइम। नाउ the displacement divided by time will give you velocity. So velocity becomes a derived quantity. इस तरीके से कुछ बेसिक फंडामेंटल क्वांटिटीज को लेकर आप बहुत सारी और derived quantities निकाल सकते हैं। ये फंडामेंटल क्वांटिटीज पहले समझ लो तो फिर इनके कॉम्बिनेशन समझना easier हो जाता है। And this way we can make our overall study of physics a little simpler. So that is the reason why we classify the various different physical quantities that we are going to come across in physics into these two main types, fundamental quantities and derived quantities. Now we took some examples of this. ये सारी जो fundamental quantities है, इनको study करना हमारा पहला मकसद होना चाहिए. That has to be our first aim. That forms the foundation and basis on which we are going to build our remaining study of physics. So I would like to draw your attention to an important table given in your 11th standard NCERT Physics textbook, in which all the fundamental quantities such as mass, time, length and current, temperature, amount of substance measured in mole, as well as luminous intensity, brightness, इस तरीके से 7 important physical quantities are listed, उनकी units and so on, and 2 more quantities which are generally not put in this table but are taken a little separately, measurement of angle and measurement of solid angle. इनको हम और आगे चल के देखते जाएंगे। तो ये टेबल जो है, आई वुड ड्रॉ योर अटेंशन टू दैट। आपके पास इस वक्त टेक्स्ट बुक है तो आप अभी इसको ले लो और देख लो। आई वुड ऑल्सो लाइक टू क्विकली टेल यू विच पेज नंबर, सो जस्ट गिव मी अ सेकेंड। So on the second page of chapter 2, which happens to be page number 17 of the NCERT textbook, so on this you have this table number 2.1 in which the basic quantity, then the different the physical quantities and the mass, the units for that and their symbols and how you define that has been written. अब इनकी definitions जो है units की वो थोड़ी सी टेढ़ी है। These are only for information. The definition of the fundamental unit, अब unit और quantity में फर्क कर लेते हैं। Mass is a quantity. How much mass we use a standard unit, what we call as an SI unit, System International Unit. By this what we mean is पूरी दुनिया ने जिसको एक यूनिफॉर्मिटी के लिए एक्सेप्ट कर लिया है, मान लिया है, ऐसा एक यूनिफाइड कॉमन यूनिट, दैट इज व्हाट वी कॉल एज द स्टैंडर्ड यूनिट. दिस happens to be following a particular system called as SI, which comes from the French word System International, and that simply means that all of the people of different nations have all agreed upon this use. तो इनके SI units क्या है? तो मास के लिए SI यूनिट होता है किलोग्राम, which we generally write as kg. टाइम के लिए the unit is second, which we generally write as small s. लेंथ के लिए standard SI unit is meter, that is written as small m. So ये इनके symbols है। आपको आपके इस टेबल में basic 7 fundamental quantities, उनके यूनिट्स के बारे में, नेम ऑफ द यूनिट, द सिंबल फॉर द यूनिट, एज वेल एज द डेफिनेशन ऑफ दैट यूनिट। अब डेफिनेशन मैंने जो कहा थोड़ा सा टेढ़ा है। सो फॉर एग्जांपल लेंथ के लिए एक जमाना था जब एक सॉलिड प्लैटिनम इरिडियम अलॉय के मेटल के एक बार पे, एक ऐसे बार पे एक मार्किंग यहाँ और एक मार्किंग यहाँ करके यहाँ से यहाँ तक का this much is 1 meter, and this kind of a bar was kept in a important museum in Paris, and that was taken as the standard. But this is subject to decay. After hundreds and thousands of years, it is possible that this will change. So scientists wanted to come to something that is immutable, not going to change even after millions of years, something that in the universe is always constant kind of thing. And so based on that, length time के लिए कुछ interesting, थोड़े से टेढ़े to understand, a bit twisted to understand, ऐसे कुछ units बनाए गए हैं। जैसे for example, length के लिए a certain number of wavelengths for a certain particular frequency light, वो जितना distance या light itself, how much particular distance it will travel in a certain small amount of time, इसको लेकर बनाया गया है। इसलिए क्योंकि light wherever it is in that particular vacuum in that much time will always travel only that much distance, so you will never ever get a change in this. चाहे धरती पे करो, चाहे कहीं भी करो, चाहे किसी भी टेम्परेचर पे करो, it will remain constant. So this way certain definitions have been arrived at which are independent of any actual physical substance. But these are theoretical definitions. There are more practical ways to understand what a meter is, such as a particular length between two markings and so on. So इस तरीके से ये जो हमारी quantities है, आप इनको study कर लेना। मैं एक बार ये आपको गिना देता हूँ। I will list them, mention them, you but definitely learn them from the table in your textbook, which I said is this particular table on page number 17. यहाँ पे as you will notice, you have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 quantities which I spoke of some time back. So these 7 quantities are first, 3 तो हमने ऑलरेडी लिखे हुए हैं, मास है, टाइम है, लेंथ है. इसके अलावा you have what we call as temperature. Some people call it thermodynamic temperature. इसका यूनिट है केल्विन, written generally as capital K. Then you also have another unit which we call, another quantity which we call as the electric current. Which is generally measured in ampere and that is generally written as capital A. ये इसका SI यूनिट है. फिर ये इसके अलावा you have amount of substance. अब mass also in a way is a measure of how much substance. So when you say mass is 200 gram or whatever or 0.2 kg, it in a way refers to how much material is there in it. But this is actually more from a chemistry point of view and sometimes in some certain concepts of physics also. Here we are referring to more of what we call as mole. How many number of particles such as ions, atoms, molecules, etc. That is the amount of substance that we are talking of and that is generally measured in what is called as mole, written in short as MOL. Lastly, रोशनी की brightness. In simple words, brightness, a little more technically, luminous intensity. If you have something like a bulb or a candle, how much light, is it bright, is it weak? Compare करने के लिए you have a quantity which we call as luminous intensity. I'll just write intensity over here since I have less space. In fact, ये भी नीचे चला गया है आपके field के यहाँ. So let me write it somewhere over here. Intensity, luminous intensity. This is measured in candela. So इसको short में CD लिखते हैं. CANDELA. Candela is the SI unit for this. So these 7 are the 7 basic or fundamental quantities. इनके अलग अलग permutations, combinations से, product से and so on, product, quotient, etc. अलग अलग fundamental quantities को arrange, rearrange करके बहुत सारे और derived quantities we can get. Apart from this, as we said, you also have angle and steradian measured in radian and so on, but that part we will omit for the moment. At a suitable time when we come to the appropriate chapters, we will define and understand what a radian is and what a steradian is. For the moment, for most of our early chapters and for our beginning, we essentially need these 7 quantities. अब इन 7 quantities के combination से जो अलग-अलग derived quantities आ सकती है, इनके कुछ examples लेते हैं. We have already discussed something like volume. We discussed a while ago something like velocity and density and so on. Let's see something more. So for example, you know something called as, let's start systematically. So you know that displacement, which is change of position, is measured in meter and this has a certain length to it. Now this length, in how much time it happens, so how much time to get this happen, इसको seconds में measure करते हैं, वो होता है time. That gives you velocity. So velocity, often written as small v, is displacement upon time. And so its unit will be meter per second or sometimes written meter s raised to -1 इस तरीके से. So ये एक derived quantity होगी. अब ये velocity कभी कभी change होती है and then you get what is called as acceleration. Acceleration gives us rate of change of velocity. So velocity upon time becomes acceleration. अब velocity is already meter per second. Upon time तो एक और s नीचे आ गया, इसको ऊपर ले लेंगे तो ये बन जाएगा हमारा m s raised to -2 मीटर पर सेकेंड स्क्वायर। अब इसको अगर मास से मल्टीप्लाई करेंगे, सो मास इनटू एक्सेलरेशन, दैट इज व्हाट यू नो एज फोर्स। So accordingly then we could have force as force equal to mass into acceleration. Mass is measured in kg, acceleration is measured in meter per second square. So kg meter per second square, which in honor of the great scientist Newton we often call as Newton. So 1 Newton is 1 kg meter per second square. सो इस तरीके से एक फंडामेंटल क्वांटिटीज के सेट से बढ़ाते बढ़ाते हम आगे तक बहुत सारी और क्वांटिटीज बना सकते हैं। फोर्स को डिस्प्लेसमेंट से मल्टीप्लाई किया तो यू नो दैट यू गेट वर्क डन, वर्क विल बी मेजर्ड इन जूल एंड सो ऑन। सो दिस वे यू कैन गेट अ वैरायटी ऑफ डिफरेंट क्वांटिटीज। उसी वर्क को और एक बार, रेट ऑफ डूइंग वर्क दैट गिव्स यू पावर, सो जूल पर सेकंड व्हिच यू आल्सो कॉल एज वॉट। So this way, starting off with the 7 quantities and their various permutations and combinations, we can get a huge number of other derived quantities. This, as we said, to recap once again, is exactly like 26 अल्फाबेट से लेकर इन्यूमरेबल वर्ड्स बनाए जा सकते हैं, या 0 से लेकर 9 तक 10 डिजिट्स के अलग अलग कॉम्बिनेशन से हम बहुत सारे नंबर्स बना सकते हैं। Same logic you find is applicable over here as well. Of course, you don't have infinite number of physical quantities, but you have several physical quantities. So, to once again summarize, 7 fundamental quantities, उनके 7 fundamental या basic units, उन units के names और symbols, and a little bit about what that measurement, that unit, how it is measured. इसका आप टेबल 2.1 अपनी टेक्स्ट बुक से एक बार पढ़ लेना। इसमें से द डेफिनेशन ऑफ द यूनिट इज नॉट रिक्वायर्ड फॉर एग्जाम पर्पस, इट इज ओनली फॉर इंफॉर्मेशन एंड इंटरेस्ट दैट यू शुड नो इट। हाउएवर द लिस्ट ऑफ द 7 क्वांटिटीज, there are SI units and their symbols that you should definitely learn, and you will definitely be asked questions based on that. अब फिजिक्स में okay, to continue. So in physics, when we measure these quantities, sometimes our measurement can be absolutely nice and correct, but more often in a practical situation you may not always get an exact result, and that may give rise to a little bit of an error. So physical quantities के measurement से related errors, and how to reduce the errors, what are the different types and causes of errors, this is one important part that we will be coming through in this chapter. This part is quite important, but उससे भी ज़्यादा important एक और बात है जो इस चैप्टर के एंड में आती है, उसको कहते हैं डायमेंशंस। इस चैप्टर की एक्चुअली ये सबसे अहम बात है, सबसे अव्वल, द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट इज एक्चुअली अबाउट डायमेंशंस। एंड सो in our introductory first class today, we will first focus upon this. It is something quite easy to understand. Now you will often wonder कि सर ये ऐसे टॉपिक्स में आगे पीछे क्यों कर रहे हैं, चैप्टर्स में आगे पीछे क्यों कर रहे हैं, why doesn't he go in a particular sequence first, second, third, fourth? तो as I said, इसके पीछे over the years बना हुआ एक थोड़ा सा लॉजिक है। इसमें जरूरी नहीं कि आपको ऐसे ही करना है, आप टेक्स्ट बुक में जो ऑर्डर दिया है उससे भी कर सकते हैं, बट मोस्ट ऑफ द टीचर्स, मोस्ट ऑफ द स्टूडेंट्स ओवर द several years have experienced, and based on their experience they have related and mentioned that if you change the order of the textbook a little and take the topics in a slightly altered order, then it becomes a little easier to grasp the whole subject. सो अपने थोड़े इंपॉर्टेंस के बेसिस पे और थोड़ा सा ये समझा तो उसके बाद ये, सो एक सर्टेन स्लाइटली ऑल्टर्ड ऑर्डर से करो तो it is a little easier to understand. That is what has often been found. That is why we make a little change in this. A textbook does not have the freedom to do this because textbook का एक बंधन होता है. They have to present it in a particular systematic way कि ये इसका प्रोग्रेस है. लेकिन एक्चुअल करते वक्त थोड़ा सा इसमें ऑल्टरेशन का स्कोप रहता है and that is why we will be making a little bit of alteration. Again, this is something like, for example, there is supposed to be a particular prescribed way of having food. So for example, there is soup first, then there is a certain set of main course and so on, and a certain dessert which you should generally follow, but within that a little bit of freedom to move. So for example, suppose somebody is in a bit of a hurry, तो वो सूप को थोड़ा सा चख के, जब इसको मैं अभी बाद में बाकी बचा हुआ कर लूँगा, let me first go ahead with the main course, then again let me finish a little bit of soup. You may do that. So ऐसा कोई hard and fast rule नहीं है कि आप ऐसे नहीं कर सकते. If for a certain reason, if there is a convenience in slightly changing the order, then we can as well follow that. So that is why we will also go ahead with dimensions first, because as I said, this is one of the most important parts of this chapter. It introduces us to something very important which you are going to use all through your 2 years and beyond that when you go into other advanced technical fields also. So dimensions and something related to that called dimensional analysis is one very important part. तो इसको हम आज पहले कर लेंगे, फिर मेजरमेंट में आने वाले एरर्स एंड सो ऑन उसके बारे में नेक्स्ट बाद में कर लेंगे. So now let's come to dimensions. Now, what exactly do we mean by dimensions? So, some time ago we mentioned these 7 basic या fundamental quantities. 7 basic or fundamental quantities. And we said that इनसे अलग अलग कॉम्बिनेशन से you get the many more derived quantities. तो ये जो 7 फंडामेंटल क्वांटिटीज है, इनको हम एक पर्टिकुलर लेटर से सिंबलाइज करके सिग्निफाई करते हैं. सो सच एज फॉर एग्जांपल मास के लिए हम यूज करते हैं लेटर n, लेंथ के लिए हम यूज करते हैं लेटर l, टाइम के लिए हम यूज करते हैं t, करंट के लिए हम यूज कर सकते हैं, कोई लोग A करते हैं, कोई I करते हैं, both are used. It depends. You can use any of these. Then this way, when you start using, for the moment we will restrict ourselves to these. Using some of these, as we said, you get the various other quantities. So for example, length is simply going to be measured in terms of L. However, velocity is length upon time, so velocity is equal to displacement upon time. Displacement is measured in length, so it is L upon t in a way. Length and time, length is a measure of the displacement, time is the measure of the time that is taken. इस L and t को अगर मैंने एक स्क्वायर ब्रैकेट में L रेज टू 1, t रेज टू, ये ऊपर आएगा तो t नीचे 1 है तो यहाँ t रेज टू -1 बन जाएगा, t रेज टू -1 ऐसे लिख दिया तो ये हो गया वेलोसिटी का डायमेंशनल रिप्रेजेंटेशन और द डायमेंशंस ऑफ वेलोसिटी. वेलोसिटी की क्वांटिटी में मास कहीं है नहीं है. So if I want, I may also add to make it a little more complete and comprehensive. Mass doesn't exist in this, so mass raised to 0, and you know that anything raised to 0 is 1. So raised to 0 मतलब ये 1 हो गया तो गायब हो गया. Anything multiplied by 1 you don't need to write it. So m raised to 0, L raised to 1, something raised to 1, वो भी 1 लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है, आप just L लिख दो तो भी चलता है. So m0 L1 t minus t raised to -1, which you can shorten and write as simply in square bracket L t raised to -1. This becomes the dimensional representation of velocity. So this is what we mean by dimensions. एक और example लेते हैं to understand this once again a little better. So some time ago we mentioned volume. If you take an object like this, a cuboid, इसका वॉल्यूम मेजर करने के लिए हम इसकी लेंथ मेजर करते हैं, इसकी ब्रेड्थ मेजर करते हैं और इसकी हाइट भी मेजर करते हैं. एंड दिस इज मेजर्ड इन मीटर, this is also measured in meter, this is also measured in meter, and so you know the unit of volume is always meter cube, meter into meter into meter. अब length measure कर रहे हैं तो physical quantity कौन सी है? Length, जिसका हमारा symbol क्या है? Capital A. Breadth भी एक तरीके से length ही है, it is in this direction that you are measuring the length. तो एक और बार लेंथ आ गई और एक और बार लेंथ आ गई. सो लेंथ इंटू लेंथ इंटू लेंथ. सो दिस बिकम्स इन अ वे लेंथ इंटू लेंथ इंटू लेंथ, विच मीन्स इट बिकम्स लेंथ क्यूब. अब वॉल्यूम में मास इंक्लूडेड है? नहीं है. टाइम इंक्लूडेड है? नहीं है. So, since most of the physical quantities are more, and at least in the beginning part of what we study, mechanics में mass, length, time ये तीन fundamental quantities ज़्यादा use होती है. Current, mole ये इतनी commonly use नहीं होने वाली. तो we can represent the dimensions of volume as dimensions in square bracket mass raised to 0, length raised to 3, time raised to 0. इस तरीके से अलग अलग एक्सपोनेंट्स या पावर्स को रेज करके fundamental quantities such as mass, length, time, you have raised them to a certain set of powers such as 0, 3, 0 respectively. This becomes the dimensions of volume. So to define dimensions, we say that the powers as in the exponents raised to, the powers to which the fundamental quantities or the basic quantities are raised to obtain the different derived units. Those powers we call as the dimensions of that particular physical quantity. So वॉल्यूम के डायमेंशंस क्या है? वॉल्यूम के डायमेंशंस है m0, l3, t0. अब आप बताओ डेंसिटी के लिए क्या हो सकता है? लेट्स ट्राई टू वर्क आउट दिस. नाउ डेंसिटी we know is mass upon volume. Mass is measured in kilo and the symbol for mass, as we saw some time back, is capital M. Volume we saw just a while ago is L raised to 3. So M raised to 1, the one you may write, you need not write, L raised to 3. And is time anywhere here? No, it is not there. So T raised to 0. All of this expressed in square brackets. ये बन गए आपके dimensions of density. इस तरीके से अलग अलग फिजिकल क्वांटिटीज के डायमेंशंस बहुत सारे आ सकते हैं. You will find a particular tabulation which I will be sharing with you of some of the most common 15 to 20 important physical quantities which you will be coming across in your first year of study of physics, and related to that some of the more commonly used quantities and their dimensions. इनका एक टेबल और लिस्ट मैं आपके साथ शेयर करूंगा, बट साथ साथ अभी एक दो तीन और क्वांटिटीज के डायमेंशंस हम लॉजिकली वर्कआउट करते हैं. आपको फिर एक्चुअली रट के करने की जरूरत नहीं है. यू कैन मेंटेन द लॉजिक. Henceforth, you have to keep in mind that the dimensions of a physical quantity are very important. Now, why are they important? Because these 7 dimensions of physics actually give you an idea what is that physical quantity dealing with. Density is something to do with mass, अपॉन वॉल्यूम, सॉरी ये मेरा 3 नहीं है, ये -3 होना चाहिए, प्लीज एक्सक्यूज दिस एरर। ये L रेस क्योंकि वॉल्यूम नीचे है, सो ये ऊपर आ जाएगा तो -3, m1 -3। सो इट इज अ मेजर ऑफ मास अपॉन वॉल्यूम। ये आइडिया इस डायमेंशन को देख के आ जाती है। इसी तरीके से अलग अलग डिराइव्ड यूनिट्स के कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट यूनिट्स, फंडामेंटल यूनिट्स क्या है, वो एनालाइज करके a scientist gets a better idea, he gets a feel of what that quantity is about, and that is why dimensions are important to understand the different physical quantities. But as we go ahead, there are some very beautiful advantages to knowing and understanding and analyzing dimensions, which we are going to come to very shortly. So that is one very important practical benefit of studying and knowing dimensions. That is what we will now come to. So let us now see some more physical quantities and their dimensions. Let's start with, as we said, displacement. Displacement is a physical quantity. Displacement has a certain length, so it will have L and the unit will be meter. इसके डायमेंशंस हो जाएंगे m0 l, यू कैन राइट इन एनी सीक्वेंस, बट ऑफन mlt लिखते हैं, lmt भी लिख सकते हैं, कोई इसमें गलत सही नहीं है, दे आर ऑल एक्सेप्टेबल। m0 l raised to 1 which you need not write and t raised to 0, ये हो गए डायमेंशंस डिस्प्लेसमेंट के। अब नेक्स्ट स्टेप, वेलोसिटी। Velocity is a certain amount of displacement upon time, so it is a certain length upon time, so it is in a way L raised to 1, T raised to -1. Mass is not involved in this, so it is m0 L1 T -1, and the unit is often meter per second. ये हो गया इसका SI यूनिट। सो ये एक अगली फिजिकल क्वांटिटी आ गई, वेलोसिटी, जो कि है रेट ऑफ चेंज ऑफ डिस्प्लेसमेंट। सो डिस्प्लेसमेंट अपॉन टाइम, डिस्प्लेसमेंट मेजर्ड इन लेंथ इन मीटर, टाइम मेजर्ड इन सेकंड, एंड सो द डायमेंशंस आर m0 l1 t -1। अब रेट ऑफ चेंज ऑफ वेलोसिटी इज एक्सेलरेशन। सो नेक्स्ट स्टेप में हम लिखते हैं एक्सेलरेशन। Acceleration A is velocity upon time, so it is in a way s upon t, all of it upon t, so it is in a way s upon t square, and so the unit becomes meter per second square. अब इसके बेसिस पे इसके डायमेंशंस क्या आएंगे, मास इसमें अभी भी नहीं है, तो m0 l1 t -2। अब acceleration multiplied by mass gives us, just a second, acceleration multiplied by mass gives us force. So next I write force, which we often write as F is equal to mass into acceleration. So it will be having mass, so m acceleration. Now ये m a ये तो हो गया, बट इसको यूनिट्स में अगर करेंगे तो ये बन जाएगा kg मीटर पर सेकंड स्क्वायर। सो दिस यूनिट ओवर हियर वी विल राइट एज kg मीटर पर सेकंड स्क्वायर, एंड यहाँ पे अगर आप लिखना चाहो तो यू कैन राइट दिस s अपॉन t स्क्वायर जो लिखा है, ये s इज डिस्प्लेसमेंट, मास के लिए यू कुड जस्ट राइट m एंड s एंड t raised to -2। ये हो गया एक उसका छोटा सिंबॉलिक रिप्रेजेंटेशन। अब इसको डायमेंशनल फॉर्म में कैसे लिखेंगे, तो अब इसमें मास की क्वांटिटी आ गई है, तो ये m0 नहीं होगा, अब m raised to 1 हो जाएगा, which you may write or you may not write। 1 you have the freedom, लिखना चाहते हो तो लिखो, नहीं लिखा तो भी चलेगा। l अभी भी 1 ही है, so l1 which again write or don't write, and t -2। So these become the dimensions of force। अब इसको वर्क में अगर हम करेंगे तो इसको मैं यहां पे जगह बना रहा हूं, वर्क is force into displacement। सो दिस विल बिकम फोर्स हमारे पास ऑलरेडी ये आ गया है, इसके यूनिट्स हमारे पास ऑलरेडी है kg मीटर पर सेकंड स्क्वायर इनटू डिस्प्लेसमेंट. डिस्प्लेसमेंट इज अगेन अ लेंथ, सो अगेन वन मोर मीटर विल गेट एडेड एंड सो इसका यूनिट बन जाएगा kg मीटर स्क्वायर पर सेकंड स्क्वायर. नाउ ऑफ कोर्स यू नो कि इसके लिए एक और टर्म हम यूज करते हैं वो है न्यूटन एंड इसके लिए एक और टर्म है वो है जूल. बट अभी हम इनको उनके कांस्टिट्यूएंट या फंडामेंटल यूनिट्स में ब्रेक कर रहे हैं तो ऐसे लिखेंगे. और इसके अब डायमेंशंस क्या बन जाएंगे, kg का एक n1, l का अब 2 हो गया है, l रेज टू 2, सो फार इट वाज 1, अब वो 2 हो गया है, एंड t रेज टू -2. So that becomes the dimensions of work. As I go ahead with this, you may write this, or as I said, I am going to share a table which you should be learning, and as a practice you can write it out later also, that's your choice. Now let me move to one more quantity, and that is power. So power is rate of doing work, so it is work upon time, so it will be F into S, force into displacement upon time. So यहाँ पे एक और बार अपॉन टाइम आ जाएगा तो इसका ये यूनिट बन जाएगा kg मीटर स्क्वायर पर सेकेंड रेज टू -3. एक और बार टाइम आ गया है नीचे डिनोमिनेटर में. सो डायमेंशंस यहाँ क्या बन जाएंगे, m1 l2 t रेज टू -3. This becomes the physical dimensions of power. So these are the dimensions of physical quantities, and this way you can have dimensions related to a variety of different quantities, such as even temperature, such as even electric current, resistance, resistivity, and so on. So all the different physical quantities that you come across, इनको अपने constituent fundamental quantities में break करके उनको जिन पावर्स को हम रेज करेंगे वो बन जाएंगे उनके डायमेंशंस. ये एक इम्पॉर्टेंट आज का लेसन आपने अच्छे तरीके से याद रखना चाहिए. दिस इज समथिंग एज आई सेड व्हिच यू आर गोइंग टू हैव टू यूज थ्रू ऑल योर, as long as you have physics and something related to physics as a matter of study, dimensions will be a very important part for you to study. So this way we have today introduced ourselves to the various physical quantities that we come across in physics, which we broadly divided into two main parts, the fundamental quantities and the derived quantities. For the different units, we said for measuring them you have variety of different units, and we spoke of a certain set of standardized units, system international units, such as kg for mass, meter for length, second for time, and so on. And then we came to an important concept called as dimensions of physical quantities. We defined dimensions as the powers to which we raise the various different fundamental physical quantities in order to get the various different derived quantities. So for any given physical quantity, the powers to which the fundamental quantities are raised, they signify the dimensions of that physical quantity. Even for a basic physical quantity or a fundamental physical quantity such as mass, you will have a set of dimensions expressed in square brackets as m raised to 1, l raised to 0, t raised to 0. ये fundamental quantity हो गई. Length के लिए likewise it will become m0, l1, t0. Time के लिए it will become m0, l0, t1. So फंडामेंटल क्वांटिटीज के भी अपने डायमेंशंस है, डिराइव्ड क्वांटिटीज के भी अपने डायमेंशंस है. किसी भी फिजिकल क्वांटिटी को अपने डायमेंशंस होंगे सिग्निफाइंग द पावर्स टू व्हिच यू रेज द डिफरेंट फिजिकल फंडामेंटल फिजिकल क्वांटिटीज. दिस डायमेंशंस का स्टडी एंड एनालिसिस, as we said, gives us many advantages which we are going to take up in a subsequent lecture. I don't want to take today's lecture as a prolonged lecture because I want to get this across as one first pre-recorded lecture, and I would like to get your feedback on this. The feedback should have things like sound related quality, clarity, जो बोर्ड पे लिखा है उसकी क्लैरिटी, मैं जो बात कर रहा हूँ उसमें कुछ कोहेरेंस और लॉजिक लग रहा है कि सर क्या गड़बड़ा रहा है, समझ में नहीं आ रहा है, ऐसे हो रहा है, मैं बहुत स्लो जा रहा हूँ कि बहुत फास्ट जा रहा हूँ, ये सारा फीडबैक जब आपसे मुझे मिलेगा, इट विल हेल्प मी टू tailor my further sessions. And so today we will stop at this as a way, as I said, you have been studying online sessions with your school and all also, but through all my discussions with various students, the feedback that I have is that it is not very comfortable to study online, which is very natural. In a way it is something like, भाई खाना कैसे बना है, दूर से एक फोटो निकाल के, थाली का एक फोटो निकाल के, भाई ये देखो अच्छा खाना बना है, doesn't give you a feel. You जब आप खुद खाओगे तो फिजिकली वहाँ प्रेजेंट होना वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. वैसे ही एक हद तक स्टडीज के लिए भी हम आमने सामने होकर इंटरेक्ट करना, दैट इज मच मोर इफेक्टिव, मच क्विकर, मच फास्टर. बट एज वी सेड, there is unfortunately a little bit of a limitation to this under current conditions, so we have to try to adjust to it, and we are doing that at this moment. But while doing it, let's try to do it as nicely and effectively as we can. And so for that I welcome all your feedback and criticism, positive, negative, everything. जो कहीं भी आपको ऐसा लगे कि सर ये जो आप कर रहे हैं बिल्कुल कंफ्यूजिंग हो रहा है, कुछ नहीं समझ में आ रहा है, ऐसा कुछ, तो ज़रूर वो भी बोलो. I will see how it can be improved upon. So I need this feedback from you. Please, after going through this, you let me know freely without any hesitation what you feel, and then accordingly we will go on to the next sessions. So at this point we will take a pause and halt for today's session. A small short session is what we have conducted. Thank you very much for being with this, and see you soon in the next session. Goodbye. See you.